So I'm Tom Robinson, Head of Sports Science at Leeds United. So I've been here since 2011. First came across Wattbike probably at university, studying in Northumbria. And then after that, studying my masters, they were kind of used a little bit for some of the testing alongside the old Monarch ergometers and things like that. And then basically coming into Leeds United is when we, first kind of saw Wattbike. I know a lot of other clubs had them, and we kind of, followed suit in bringing them into our environment here. So what I like about the Wattbike is kind of the amount of data you can collect from using them. So we kind of use them to test the players, so find out their aerobic capacity in certain tests that you can do on the bike, and just the instant feedback that you get when the players are using it. So there's all the kind of power output. You can link up to a heart rate belt, you can see what zones they're working in, and it really makes my job easier in terms of prescribing a training session to a player and knowing that what they're doing is what I want to get out of it from that session. Another thing that is really useful is kind of the asymmetry stuff with the kind of pedal efficiency score. So you can kind of see if a player is doing more on the left or right side, and you get that feedback live, which is really useful for us, particularly in kind of a rehab setting. If someone's coming back from an injury and you want to see that they're putting the right amount of force through one side or the other, or if there is a discrepancy there, you can kind of highlight that straight away and have the feedback in real time. In terms of testing using the Wattbike, pre-season's obviously a good time for that. Certainly with the goalkeepers who aren't as used to running as the outfield players, but still need to be conditioned aerobically, we tend to use a couple of tests. So a 20-minute time trial to probably establish the FTP. So for some of the longer duration work, that's really useful. And then the ramp test to give you the MAP as well, so the maximal aerobic power. And doing both types of tests allows us to kind of have a better grasp over the training zones that we're working in. So whether we want to do a longer duration aerobic session in the lower heart rate zones to condition their aerobic system, or maybe burn some extra calories, or likewise train at higher intensities in kind of zone 4, zone 5, zone 6 and push the anaerobic component of the training. I think that's really useful for us to get that data in pre-season and then use that across the full season, particularly with the goalkeepers. So in terms of where we use the Wattbike most, I would say reconditioning players when they've had an injury is one of the key ones. So often when players have an injury, they're not able to go out on the grass for a period of time. There's an acute phase of the injury that you have to get through, and then you kind of build up their training load following that. And in those early stages of an injury, if a player is load compromised and they can't run, the Wattbike is the perfect way to perform a session that challenges them aerobically. So we do, for example, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off for a 4-minute block, give them a little active recovery in between, and we could do that 4, 5, 6 times. And again, with the live feedback from the screen and with the heart rate monitor, you kind of know that they're almost replicating the same intensity that they would be able to get during a running session. So that's really useful for us. Second way we'd probably use it is recovery. So it's really useful to use on a match day +1 for us, so the day after a match. Again, using our knowledge of the zones that the players would be working in, we can prescribe a low intensity aerobic session that would promote recovery, promote blood flow, and just kind of get rid of that soreness that they've experienced from the match and start the recovery process from there as soon as we can. So in terms of off-feet conditioning, one example of the way we've used the Wattbike this season, and certainly in the past couple of pre-seasons, is if we have players who maybe have issues such as tendinopathies, so load-related issues where excessive time on the pitch and excessive running might exacerbate some of those symptoms, we can kind of contrast the running that they do with some bike work. So if the players were doing 8 1-kilometre runs, certain players that might be too much for them in terms of an acute load on their body. So they might do 1-kilometre run and then a block on the Wattbike, and then a 1-kilometre run, then a block on the Wattbike. So they're still getting the same duration of work, but only half of it is running based, the other half is bike based. And again, from the live data that you get and after the session, you can see that the cardiorespiratory response is the same as the other lads who did the 8 1Ks running wise. What separates Wattbikes from other types of indoor bike for me as a keen cyclist myself is just the feel of the bike. It really feels very similar to riding on a road bike. You get the same kind of resistance. There's a lot more sensitivity in terms of the resistance you can put onto the bike. Even just the feel of the handlebars, the feel of the pedals, you can get locked in. And again, just the level of data that you can get from the bike itself is probably unmatched in terms of indoor bikes. So whenever I want to do a bike session, it's straight on the Wattbike, because it's just, it's the best bike for me. The players have a love-hate relationship with the Wattbike, I think, because they know when they're on a Wattbike, they're 9 times out of 10 they're going to be doing a tough session. But again, they have confidence in the bike. They know that they're going to get a good workout out of it. They know that it's a solid piece of kit, and after they come off it, they know they've worked hard and they know that they've done a proper session. So yeah, a lot of them will say they hate it, but deep down I think they love it because they know there's no other piece of kit that will give them as good a workout as the Wattbike. In terms of individualising training on the Wattbike, the testing is obviously key to that. So if we want to prescribe a certain session for a player that is individualised to their capacity, you first have to understand what their capacity is. So again, going through a testing battery probably of the 20-minute time trial and then probably a ramp test at another time gives you a picture of that player's sort of physiological makeup in terms of their ability to perform on the bike, and then from there we're able to prescribe different training sessions at different zones and different intensities relative to that player, because some players are better on bikes than others, some players are better runners than others, and that's the key thing about my job, is ensuring that the stimulus we're exposing the players to is right for them and their level of fitness and their capacity essentially.